Galactic leaders panic. Humans unveiled ships that shouldn't exist. Part 1. The Council's Arrogance. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the usual pompous chatter of beings who believed themselves masters of the universe. Ambassador Zexel of the Cronin Empire adjusted his crystalline exoskeleton, the light refracting through his translucent body as he sneered at the holographic display, showing Earth's modest fleet. "Look at these pathetic humans," he hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. "Still using chemical propulsion like cave dwellers playing with fire." Chancellor Veraden, the spider-like representative of the Arachnid Collective, clicked her mandibles in what passed for laughter among her species. Her 8 eyes gleamed with malicious amusement. "I find it almost adorable, really. They think those tin cans floating around their little blue marble constitute a space navy. How precious." Fleet Admiral Caxter of the Hegemony War Council slammed his massive fist on the obsidian table, causing ripples to spread across the holographic interface. His scarred face, marked by centuries of conquest, twisted into a cruel grin. "Adorable? I call it insulting. These meat sacks dare to request membership in our council? They should be grateful we haven't glassed their planet for sport." The chamber erupted in a symphony of alien laughter, clicking, buzzing, and guttural sounds that would have made lesser beings flee in terror. But today, their amusement was about to be cut short in the most spectacular way possible. High Counselor Melthora, her ethereal form shimmering with barely contained energy, raised her hand for silence. The ancient being had witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations, and her patience with the humans had worn thin. "Enough," she commanded, her voice resonating through the chamber like the tolling of a funeral bell. "We have indulged these humans long enough. Their ambassador has been requesting an audience for 3 cycles now. Let us entertain their delusions one final time before we decide their fate." The massive doors of the chamber groaned open, revealing a figure that made several council members pause. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked in with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing something everyone else doesn't. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a plain black suit that seemed almost insulting in its simplicity compared to the elaborate regalia of the other delegates. But it was her eyes that caught their attention. Those dark brown eyes held secrets, and more disturbingly, they held amusement. "Honored council members," Sarah began, her voice steady and clear, "I come before you today not as a supplicant, but as a representative of humanity's growing presence in this galaxy." Zextel's laughter was like the sound of breaking glass. "Growing presence? Child, your species has barely managed to crawl beyond your own solar system. We have armadas that could reduce your home world to cosmic dust before your primitive sensors even detected our approach." Sarah tilted her head slightly, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Is that so? How interesting. Tell me, Ambassador Zextel, when was the last time your intelligence networks provided you with updated information on human capabilities?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Veraden's multiple eyes narrowed as she accessed her species' vast intelligence network. "Our last comprehensive scan of your pathetic fleet was conducted 6 months ago. Nothing has changed. You still possess fewer than 200 vessels, most of which wouldn't survive a direct hit from our weakest escort fighters." 6 months, Sarah repeated, her smile growing wider. "How remarkably outdated of you." Caxter leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow across the table. "Are you suggesting, human, that your species has somehow managed to build a significant fleet in half a standard cycle? Even with our technology, such a feat would be impossible." Sarah's laugh was soft, almost musical, but there was something in it that made the hair on the back of several necks stand up. "Oh, Admiral, you're absolutely right. Building a significant fleet in 6 months would be impossible, which is why we didn't build it in 6 months. The chamber fell silent. Melthora's form flickered with agitation. "Explain yourself, human." "With pleasure," Sarah replied, pulling out a small device that looked suspiciously like primitive human technology. "You see, esteemed council, you made a fundamental error in your understanding of humanity. You confused our public face with our actual capabilities." She pressed a button on the device, and the chamber's holographic display flickered to life, showing what appeared to be empty space near the edge of the solar system. "What is the meaning of this display?" Zexel demanded, his crystalline form pulsing with irritation. "Patience," Sarah said, her voice now carrying an edge that hadn't been there before. "Computer, initiate Decloak sequence Omega-7. The empty space on the display began to shimmer, and slowly, like a mirage becoming reality, shapes began to emerge from nothingness. First 1, then 10, then 100, then the numbers became impossible to count. The chamber erupted into chaos. Shouts of disbelief and rage filled the air as the display revealed a fleet that defied every assumption they had made about human capabilities. These weren't the crude chemical rockets they had been monitoring. These were vessels that seemed to bend the very laws of physics, their sleek forms crackling with energy signatures that their sensors couldn't properly analyze. "Impossible!" Caxter roared, his voice cracking with shock. "Our intelligence networks are flawless. We monitor every world, every shipyard, every significant technological development." Sarah's expression had shifted from diplomatic courtesy to something far more dangerous. "You monitor what we allow you to monitor, Admiral. Did you really think a species that went from horse-drawn carriages to splitting atoms in less than 2 centuries would be content to plod along at the pace you expected?" Varaden's mandibles clicked frantically as she tried to process the readings. "These energy signatures, they're beyond our understanding. How is this possible?" "Oh, I think you begin to understand," Sarah said, her voice now carrying the weight of barely contained fury. "You've spent decades treating humanity like a curiosity, a minor annoyance to be tolerated or eliminated at your convenience. You've threatened our world, dismissed our achievements, and laughed at our aspirations. Did you think we were just going to sit quietly and accept whatever fate you decided for us?" The display zoomed in on one of the human vessels, revealing details that made several council members gasp. The ship's hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Energy coursed through channels that formed impossible angles, and the very space around the vessel seemed to bend and twist. "These designs," Melthrow whispered, her ancient voice trembling with something that might have been fear. "They incorporate principles that shouldn't be possible with your level of development." Sarah's smile was no longer pleasant. It was the smile of a predator revealing its teeth. "Level of development? You mean the level you've been carefully monitoring while we've been busy elsewhere? Tell me, Counselor, how much attention have you been paying to the spaces between stars? The dark matter streams? The quantum foam layers where normal sensors can't reach?" The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. They had been watching Earth, monitoring the obvious signs of human development, while humanity had been building in secret using methods and locations that their surveillance couldn't detect. "You've been lying to us," Zexel accused, his crystalline form now pulsing with alarm rather than arrogance. "Lying." Sarah's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "No, Ambassador. We've been learning from every slight, every dismissal, every threat you made against our world. And while you've been congratulating yourselves on your superiority, we've been preparing for this moment." The display shifted again, showing more of the hidden fleet. Ships of impossible size and configuration filled the screen, their numbers growing with each passing second as more vessels decloaked throughout human space. "How many?" Caxter demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's eyes gleamed with dark satisfaction. "Enough." But the true shock was yet to come. As the Council watched in growing horror, the human fleet began to move, not with the slow, predictable trajectories of conventional spacecraft, but with fluid grace that defied everything they knew about physics and engineering. "They're not using any propulsion system we recognize," Varaden reported, her voice tight with panic. "No energy signatures, no exhaust patterns, no gravitational disturbances. They're moving through space as if it doesn't exist." "Space," Sarah said softly, "is just another frontier to be conquered. And conquest, as you've taught us so well, belongs to those with the will to seize it." The chamber fell into stunned silence as the full magnitude of humanity's deception became clear. They had been played, manipulated, and utterly outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as primitive, and this was only the beginning. Sarah looked around the chamber, taking in the faces of beings who had moments before been planning humanity's subjugation or destruction. Her expression softened slightly, but the steel in her voice remained. Now then, shall we discuss humanity's application for council membership? I believe the terms of negotiation have evolved. The silence stretched on, heavy with the weight of a universe that had suddenly become a much more dangerous place for those who had grown comfortable in their assumed superiority. The age of human deference was over, and something new, something far more terrifying to those who had abused their power, was about to begin. Outside the chamber, hidden sensors detected the quantum signatures of the human fleet as it moved through space with impossible grace. Each vessel a testament to humanity's greatest strength. Not their technology, not their weapons, but their ability to learn, adapt, and strike back when the time was right. The galaxy was about to discover why you should never underestimate the species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on a world where everything was trying to kill them. Part 2, The Reckoning. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Sarah Chen stood perfectly still, watching as the most powerful beings in the galaxy grapple with the collapse of everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. The holographic display continued to show impossible vessels materializing from nothingness, each one a slap in the face to their collective arrogance. High Counselor Melthra was the first to break the stunned quiet, her ethereal form flickering with rapid bursts of energy that betrayed her agitation. This cannot be legitimate technology. You must have stolen these designs from a more advanced civilization. Humans simply lack the intellectual capacity for such innovations. Sarah's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. Stolen? From whom exactly? Your own species, perhaps? Because I seem to recall your scientists declaring such propulsion methods theoretically impossible just last cycle when our researchers submitted papers to your precious Academy of Sciences. The reminder hit like a physical blow. Several council members shifted uncomfortably as they recalled dismissing human scientific papers as amusing fantasies and primitive speculation. Ambassador Zexel's crystalline form was now pulsing with rapid, panic light patterns. Even if these vessels are genuine, you cannot possibly have the infrastructure to support such a fleet. The resource requirements alone would be astronomical. Sarah's smile turned predatory. Resources? You mean like the asteroid mining operations you've been taxing us for? The ones you assumed were barely profitable enough to keep our little civilization fed. She gestured the display, which shifted to show massive industrial complexes hidden within seemingly empty asteroid fields. Funny thing about assumptions, Ambassador, they make you blind to what's right in front of you. The industrial stations revealed on screen were beyond anything the Council had imagined possible. Self-replicating foundries worked with materials that seemed to defy classification, constructing components that fit together with mechanical precision that bordered on the supernatural. Robotic systems move with fluid grace, assembling weapons and drive systems using principles that made seasoned engineers among the Council shake their heads in disbelief. Fleet Admiral Caxter slammed his fist on the table again, but this time the gesture carried desperation rather than dominance. This is madness. How did our intelligence networks miss installations of this magnitude? We have sensors monitoring every significant energy signature in this galaxy. You have sensors monitoring known energy signatures, Sarah corrected, her voice taking on an almost lecturing tone. But what happens when someone develops entirely new forms of energy manipulation, when they learn to work with forces you've never even theorized about? She pressed another control on her device, and the display zoomed in on one of the human vessels. The ship's hull rippled like water, revealing internal structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Energy flowed through conduits that formed impossible geometric patterns, creating propulsion effects that violated every known law of physics. Chancellor Varaden's mandibles clicked in rapid succession, a sign of extreme distress among her species. These energy patterns, they're manipulating space-time itself. The computational power required for such precise control should be beyond any civilization's capabilities. Should be, Sarah agreed cheerfully. According to your models, anyway. But then again, your models never accounted for human ingenuity, did they? You see, while you've been content to work within the established frameworks of science, humanity has been asking the more interesting question: what if the frameworks themselves are wrong? The implications of her words sent shockwaves through the chamber. These beings had built their entire civilization on certain scientific principles, confident in their understanding of universal laws. The idea that a younger species might have discovered fundamental errors in their theories was almost incomprehensible. Melthra's voice carried a tremor that betrayed millennia of accumulated confidence cracking. You're suggesting that your species has rewritten the basic principles of physics? Rewritten? Sarah laughed, and the sound carried genuine mirth mixed with something darker. Oh no, Counselor. We haven't rewritten anything. We've simply stopped limiting ourselves to your version of what's possible. The display shifted again, showing a human vessel performing maneuvers that made several council members physically recoil. The ship folded space around itself, stepping between dimensions as casually as walking through a doorway. It appeared in multiple locations simultaneously before converging on a single point, its very existence challenging the notion that matter and energy follow predictable rules. Dimensional manipulation, Zextel whispered, his usual arrogance completely evaporated. That technology has been theoretical for thousands of cycles. Even our most advanced species have barely scratched the surface of such concepts. Theoretical for you, Sarah corrected. Functional for us. You see, there's something you've never understood about humanity. We don't accept that something can't be done just because it's never been done before. When you told us faster-than-light travel was impossible, we found 17 different ways to achieve it. When you said matter replication was fantasy, we built factories that could assemble atoms like building blocks. She gestured toward the display, where more human vessels continued to decloak throughout the galaxy. The numbers were staggering, representing a fleet capable of challenging every major power simultaneously. But the real beauty, Sarah continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, isn't in the technology itself. It's in the fact that we developed all of this while you were watching. Every breakthrough, every innovation, every impossible achievement happened right under your collective noses, while you were busy congratulating yourselves on keeping the primitive humans in their place. Admiral Caxtor's scarred face had gone pale. A remarkable feat for a being whose species was known for their unshakable composure in battle. The resource allocation alone, the coordinated effort required, this represents the work of centuries. Decades, actually, Sarah corrected with obvious satisfaction. You'd be amazed what motivated humans can accomplish when they're working toward a common goal, especially when that goal involves proving wrong every species that ever looked down on them. The council members exchanged glances filled with growing panic. They were beginning to understand that this wasn't just about superior technology. This was about a fundamental shift in galactic power that had been orchestrated over decades while they remained blissfully unaware. Chancellor Vordan leaned forward, her multiple eyes fixed on Sarah with desperate intensity. What do you want? Surely this display of power has a purpose beyond mere intimidation. Sarah's expression grew serious, and for the first time since entering the chamber, her diplomatic mask slipped completely away. What replaced it was something far more dangerous. The cold, calculating gaze of someone who had been planning this moment for a very long time. What do we want? She repeated slowly. We want recognition. We want respect. We want an end to the casual threats against our homeworld that you've been making for the past 50 years. But most of all, we want justice. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Justice. Not negotiation, not compromise, but justice for decades of condescension and threats. You see, Sarah continued, her voice now carrying the weight of humanity's collective anger. We've kept detailed records of every slight, every dismissal, every time one of your species suggested that Earth would be better off as a mining colony or a recreational hunting preserve. We've documented every trade agreement designed to keep us dependent, every technological restriction meant to prevent our advancement, every casual discussion of our eventual subjugation. The display changed again, showing archived communications and diplomatic records that made several council members flinch. Their own words, their own plans, laid bare for all to see. The Cronin Empire, Sarah said, turning to face Zextel directly, has spent the last 30 years developing what you call the final solution for the human problem. Complete planetary sterilization, followed by colonization. Very efficient, very thorough. Zexthol's crystalline form flickered rapidly as he tried to formulate a response. Those were theoretical contingencies, standard diplomatic preparations for unlikely scenarios. Theoretical, Sarah repeated flatly. Like our fleet was theoretical? Like our technology was theoretical? She gestured toward the display, which now showed detailed schematics of Cronin dreadnoughts positioned as strategic jump points around human space. These ships have been in position for 6 months, Ambassador, waiting for the order to begin your theoretical genocide. The accusations continued, each one more damning than the last. The Arachnid Collective had been developing bioweapons specifically designed to target human genetics. The Hegemony War Council had been drawing up conscription protocols to use surviving humans as slave labor in their mining operations. Even the supposedly neutral High Council had been preparing legislation to formally classify humanity as a pre-sentient species unworthy of protection under galactic law. So you see, Sarah concluded, her voice carrying the chill of deep space, this isn't just about demanding membership in your little club. This is about holding you accountable for crimes you haven't committed yet, but fully intended to. The chamber erupted into chaos as accusations flew and denials rang hollow. But above the noise, Sarah's voice cut through like a blade. However, she said, and a single word somehow commanded absolute silence, humanity is not without mercy. We're prepared to offer you all a choice. She pressed the final control on her device, and the display showed the true scope of humanity's hidden empire, colonies throughout the galaxy, research stations in dimensions that shouldn't exist, defensive installations that could reshape local space-time itself. The revelation was staggering in its implications. You can accept humanity as an equal partner in galactic affairs, with full council membership and veto power over any decisions affecting our species. You can dismantle your weapons aimed at our worlds, abandon your plans for our subjugation, and learn to treat us with the respect we've earned through our achievements. The alternative hung unspoken in the air, but the message was clear. The days of humanity being the galaxy's convenient victim were over. Or, Sarah continued softly, you can continue to see us as a threat to be eliminated, in which case you'll discover just how effective we become at eliminating threats to our survival. As if summoned by her words, the human fleet began to move, not toward the council station, but into positions throughout the galaxy that would give them strategic control over every major trade route, every critical resource depot, every military installation that mattered. The message was unmistakable. Humanity was no longer asking for permission to exist. They were announcing their intention to thrive, with or without the council's approval. The vote, when it finally came, was unanimous. Welcome to the Galactic Council, humanity. Try not to break anything too important while you're getting settled. As Sarah Chen walked out of the chamber, she allowed herself one small smile. Revenge, as it turned out, was a dish best served with overwhelming technological superiority and decades of careful planning. The galaxy would never be the same.